We are happy to announce that this episode of the SWW show is partially brought to you by Humble Bundle. Well, not really. We are part of the Humble Bundle referral program, and we just wanted to say that if you like really cheap games and maybe helping charity pending the Humble thing going on, all you have to do is go to humblebundle.com/partner equals SWW. That's right, humblebundle.com/partner equals SWW. And you just do your normal stuff, and it just kind of helps us get a couple bucks here and there. Maybe it helps AJ get his lights, maybe it's Mike camera, maybe we actually pay Corey for helping us out. But again, if you're going to go buy games anyway, it might be worth checking out. Hello everyone and welcome back. So today we are here to talk about a special new game on our list of the many games we're going through this year to talk about. To get us started, do you mind introducing yourself and the game we're here to talk about?
Sure. So my name's Josh Halloran, and I'm the lead developer of 8-Bit Adventures 2, which is basically our attempt to create a new game in the old style of classic Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest and those types of games.
So, obviously, like I have a sense of nostalgia this game, so I get it. But I'm curious, kind of, when you look back or you were thinking about making a project, kind of what drew you to this? Was it just you really into them? Was there a flaw in these types of games that you wanted to fix? Kind of, what was your thought process?
Yes, I've basically been a fan of these kind of games my whole life. It's definitely something that it's a genre that really connected with me as a kid and has stayed very relevant to me, as I've gotten older. But it wasn't so much that I guess I wanted to fix a flaw as I wanted to recapture something that I thought not as many games captured nowadays. In a lot of the old particularly like thinking about like Final Fantasy and that sort of thing, there's a particular charm and a style of storytelling that I don't think you see in a lot of games now. And, a lot of games that do try and sort of recapture the old days, they tend to sort of follow maybe a bit more of the, what would you say, sort of the sort of simple NES, like Warriors of Light going out to, play Chaos kind of idea. So I wanted to sort of take some of the ideas of, more on the lines of like Final Fantasy VI, where like that's a really involved, character-driven story. And so I wanted to kind of tell a new story in this style.
So and I agree with you from the sense of what you just said, like, all of the stories, I think, kind of recently, not generic, I don't know the right term, but it very much is the, like, I think there is a trend of, it's light versus dark, we're done, have a good day, there's your RPG.
Yeah. Exactly.
What I'm curious about that, when you think about the story, how do you make sure there is either that sense of gray or a sense of different twist, kind of, like, are you looking back as you write it? Because your RPGs, part of them is, they're so long and so convoluted, like most RPGs, right? They're just comically long if you think of the adventure you're going on. Kind of, how are you controlling for that and making sure you still have that sense of not this cut and dry story?
Well, yes, that's a big question, and definitely it takes a lot of retrospection as you're making the game. Definitely a lot of testing and really thinking things through. My model really was Chrono Trigger, because that game is so well paced. It doesn't really bog the player down with a lot of grinding or filler, or it doesn't really waste the story's time. So that definitely was a good benchmark to sort of look at and use. I think the other thing, in terms of like the idea of grey and stuff like that, I think the idea was just having a villain which was just a little more unusual. Sort of thinking maybe more along the lines of PlayStation 1 Final Fantasy rather than sort of NES Final Fantasy. In Final Fantasy 9, for example, Kudra is a really bad guy, but at the same time there's, some backstory and some intrigue that makes him a little deeper, and I guess he's really grappling with the themes of that game. And so it was really about thinking about, okay, well, from the villain's perspective, what does he want? How does he see himself? All that kind of thing. And really not having a cut and dried answer to, what the right thing to do for our heroes is because, So essentially the idea is that saving the world dooms our villain character. But for the villain character to save himself, he has to change the world completely in a way that may doom everyone else. And so that's sort of the central quandary and question that develops over the game is, what's the right answer here?
Perfect. No, that makes a lot of sense, kind of. Let's talk about the other thing, kind of. When people think JRPGs, kind of in sense, we talk about the graphics, we talk about kind of this like good versus evil in some capacity story, whether there's a gray there or not. The other thing everyone talks about is the leveling system and how you handle combat. I want to dig into this one with the bulk of our time. So, combat in a JRPG, there are 10,000 systems out there that you can choose from. Well, let's start with the obvious. So you've said, I know you said Chrono Trigger earlier. Is that like what you pull from for your combat system? Kind of, let's start with that. Where did you kind of get your inspiration from it?
Okay, so combat is pretty much based on Final Fantasy X. Final Fantasy X introduced the conditional turn-based system, which, for the series anyway, that basically removed the ATB bar that, had been filling up in the games for the past 6 games. And it made everything, like straight turn-based. So every one character would take a turn. You had as long as you needed to make that, make the action on that turn, and then it would go to the next person's turn. The big thing that Final Fantasy X did was it added a turn list, so you could see, who was coming up. So, when enemies got to attack and when your characters got to attack. So you could strategize ahead of time and think, okay, well, if I do this with this character now, then on the next turn I can do this move, and then the enemy will attack, but then I can do this. And so that was a big leap in terms of, strategic development. So I wanted to include that. One of the other things that Final Fantasy X did, which I really like, is that even though it has, I think 7 characters in its full party, you can only have 3 of them on the battlefield. But 10 introduced the ability to swap characters in and out any time you wanted without wasting a turn. I really like this mechanic, and it became one of the real cornerstones of 8-Bit Adventures 2 as the game goes on, which is that even though 3 characters can only be on the battlefield at once, you can essentially use your entire 7-character party. So 10 was really the biggest basis there. And Chrono Trigger came in a little bit with stuff like, the team attacks that you can do. So we've got combo and trio attacks, which are just like dual text and triple text from that game. But yeah, we take influence from a lot of different things.
No, that's interesting. With the thing you said too, so you're copying the 10 thing of like, hey, there's 3 combatants, or where there's combatants, we kind of switch them out and stuff. How did you kind of, either when you're thinking of actually not just the design of the combat system, but from a programming point of view, then kind of control, there's always that urge of like, oh, now I can do this little thing, this, like, how are you controlling kind of that creep, especially when you're in the engine and doing these systems of like trying to not overthink them also, but make them playable?
Yeah, honestly, that is a challenge, because, obviously you start out with everything on pen and paper, and you've designed, this battle system as deep as you can. And then when you actually, go hands-on with it, it starts to get the gears turning, and you think, oh, this would be good, and that'd be good, and this would be good. And definitely, like, we added several things. I mean, one of the things that definitely helped with that is that our programmer, Sufyan Noor, he is wonderful at this, and he can make very impressive changes in a very short period of time. So as we played and tested and things like that, one of the things that came up was that, actually, it would really help the strategy if you could see enemy health bars. But there wasn't like a lot of room on the interface. The UI had already been designed, and so it's like, how do we do that? So we sort of figured out a way to sort of slot that in, and what that means is that you can always keep track of your progress when fighting an enemy, of course, and you can strategize based on how close the enemy is to death or how early you are in the fight or whatever. So stuff like that definitely did creep in, but there is a point where you just have to be like, okay, this would be cool, but it doesn't really fit the game. We can't fit it into the UI. It's going to be bloating the battle system in some way. And just as you test, you get a feel for that, I guess. It's a very instinctual thing in some ways.
No, that's how it all. This is. I think people kind of underestimate how instinctual most of these are. I'm just like,
yes, agreed.
Like,
absolutely.
how'd you know it worked? You just like I didn't until you just told me it did.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. It's so funny. There's so many things where it's just it just feels right, and you don't really know why, and until you start sort of playing the game more and breaking it down, and but you have to make an initial decision, and usually you have to make an initial decision, without any tangible thing in front of you. You're really just sort of playing in the realm of imagination when you start designing a game. So it is amazing how sometimes it just all comes together.
That is, I think it's undercut how often it's just that. It just, it works, it works, it just works. But let's talk then of decisions and how this came together. What I'm curious about is, so during your time of developing this, is there a system or something in the game that almost got there, but you guys had to make the decision to pull it or fundamentally change it?
Oh, now that's an interesting question. I don't think there was a system which went anywhere, it didn't, I don't think anything went that far in development that, that had to be scrapped. But there definitely, for example, there's an airship battle minigame in 8-Bit Adventures 2. And at one point that was going to be a little more complex when I started working on that and started prototyping that in the engine. So that changed a little bit, but it ended up, probably in a better way. Just kind of keeping it kept it a little more simple and straightforward. And, it's basically just a mini game about sort of maneuvering and taking your shots at the right time. Whereas before it was going to be much more complicated about controlling the cannons and, moving into different positions and giving orders from a detailed RPG menu and that sort of thing. So that ended up sort of being simplified to, about 4 or 5 commands, that were displayed with icons. So that sort of, changed a lot. There were definitely elements which got tweaked. There's a mechanic in the game where you can choose weak, normal, or strong attacks for some characters. So rather than just hitting the attack command, it'll actually pop up a menu and you can choose weak, normal, or strong. And the effects of those commands have definitely changed over time. They used to take an idea from my previous game, Tales Across Time, where basically if you used a weak attack, you'd restore more or less MP and stuff like that. Whereas if you did strong attack, you'd hit harder but wouldn't restore anything. That changed in terms of, kind of the purpose. So basically now the weak attack is by far more accurate and the strong attack has a really high critical chance, but it's a riskier move. So just, little things like that. I don't think there's anything too major that got scrapped because I mean, the game took 7 years as it was, so I don't think we could pivot too drastically while making it, unfortunately.
No, that's fair. 7 years. So let's talk about that thing then. So I gotta ask the question. 7 years. How long did you think it was going to take 7 years ago? 2. And so you were only almost 4 times off. I think that's about the percentage most people get.
Yeah. No. So basically, I'd made and released games before, but I made much smaller scale stuff. And this one, I wanted to plan out everything, from day dot, so that our artist knew exactly what he had to do, and our composer knew exactly what he had to do, and our programmer knew exactly what he had to do. And the problem with doing that, for me anyway, was essentially that I designed a very big game, and I designed a game with a lot of unique assets and a lot of cutscenes and story elements and all sorts of things. And so, in retrospect, it's well, of course that took as long as it did because it was a really massive idea for a project. But at the time it was going off my previous games, well, this is how long an area takes to make, so it should be all right. But I didn't really take into account that, we were, really trying to lift our game with this one and, make cutscenes a lot more complicated, make dungeons a lot more complicated. Towns, more detailed and that sort of thing, and all that just kind of compounded to make the game take a lot longer than I originally anticipated. So it's been a big learning experience for sure.
God, No, that is yeah. I can't even describe how accurate. It's such a yeah. People are like everyone's like, see, 2 years at least makes sense. Everyone's like, it'll take 6 months. I equate game making to war, wherever. People are like, it'll be done by Christmas. And then Christmas comes and goes, and it's still not done.
Yep. That's the most perfect analogy I've ever heard. Because that's right. I mean, no war ever has gone to plan. And,
right.
It's definitely the same.
If you look at any document anywhere from both sides on World War II, they're like 3 months, 4 months max. Like it'll be over. A decade later comes by.
I don't know if it's just that we're all overconfident, or if we all just kind of underestimate the task that's before us.
A little both, I think.
Probably.
Yeah, there's so times you start coding stuff and you look back 6 months later, you're like, what idiot wrote this? Oh crap.
That was me. Yep. No, there's lots of things where it's like, especially because the game was done over such a long period of time, there's stuff that I looked over last year that was from 2016, and it's like, why did I handle it like that? That's so stupid.
What engine are you guys using to make the game?
So we used RPG Maker MV, just with a lot of plugins.
So that's a good one. So I'm thinking. So I understand Unity and Real World a lot more, and obviously over time they change and some stuff's incompatible. Did you guys have the thing of you just haven't updated engines for 6 years? You updated them over time. How did you kind of handle that?
Well, I mean, the nice thing, one of the kind of handy things about RPG Maker is that it doesn't. It gets updates, but it's it doesn't get the kind of major overhauls that Unreal and Unity do. And it really only had, I think it got to maybe 6.0 or something like that. So, over the years, there weren't that many updates, and most of them were really just fixing bugs in the engine. They weren't really changing or breaking anything. Sometimes they did, but most of the time it was all right. And so, yeah, really just, I spoke to Sufjan, our programmer, in 20, I think we started talking in 2015, about the battle system and all the different elements that, we were going to have to create to make it work. And just sort of built it up over time. So the battle system was essentially, in place by the time we released a first look demo in 2017. And so we just kept iterating from there, especially based on feedback we got from the demo and stuff like that. But no, I mean, we had to add. The funny thing that I discovered really was early on was that RPG Maker does not like making an 8-bit style game. So we had to add all kinds of things to either just remove features that were in RPG Maker MV that was sort of trying to add smoothing filters or stuff like that. Or we had to add functionality to make the fade outs not use transparency, but instead use color stepping. So you get that sort of, gradual fade out by jumping between colors like you did on the NES. All sorts of things like that. So there was a lot that, was required to make the engine visually compatible as well as, functionally for the gameplay.
Perfect. No, that makes a lot of sense. So you don't know, this is 8-Bit Adventures 2 coming out real soon from when we're talking. So this is the closing kind of point here now. How stressed are you?
I mean, a little bit, but I have, I have people have played it, people that I know and that sort of thing, and all the responses from the demo and stuff like that have been really positive. So I'm very hopeful, but it's definitely. A 7-year investment of time and passion is a big investment, and so it's nerve-wracking, but at the same time, I feel really proud of what we've made, I just hope it really connects with people as much as the team and I hope it does, and I just want to take a moment just to shout out Jaram Fahi. He's our artist. Sebastian Cruz, our composer, and Sufjan Noor, our programmer, because without them there would absolutely be no game, and I'm very grateful to them for sticking with the project for so long.
Perfect. Well, I want to say thank you again for joining us today, and best of luck as you're finishing. Remember, 8-Bit Adventures 2 on Steam.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, it's been a real pleasure talking to you, and thanks for giving us a a chance to talk about the game and share it with everyone.
Perfect. Well, thank you again, and everyone go wishlist the game and check out the demo. And it comes out real soon, so maybe go buy it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
The SWW Show and all of its affiliate podcasts are podcast by me, Mike Maroney, and AJ Losi, sometimes by our contributors, including Corey King. You can follow the SWW Show on social media at the SWW Show, or sooner or later you go to patreon.com/SWW to help us out. Thank you. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day.